Welcome, and thank you for attending today's event. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Kim Wilcox, Chancellor of UC Riverside, who will provide today's opening remarks. Chancellor.
What are you doing there, Mr. Attorney General?
Thanks, and welcome to a great night for the university. It's really great to have you here. Great to have our candidates here. This is a special night in all kinds of ways. Special for the university, but also special for the state. The chief legal advisor to the government of the state of California is a crucial job. When you think of a government, it's a body of laws that help to define a people. And there's no one more important in a system than the person that advises on those laws. I'm hopeful tonight that we will find someone like Edward Keewan, the first Attorney General of the state of California. But I'm even more eager that we find someone like Ulysses S. Webb. And I was kind of meeting the candidates and talking a little bit. Ulysses S. Webb was the Attorney General for 37 years. Whoa. And I took a look. I think they've all got 37 years in them. So tonight, in addition to listening to the quality of the questions, watch for tenacity and perseverance, because 37 is the record to beat. For us at UCR, this is a special night because of the importance of the election, but also because it gives us a chance to think about our future. We can think about our future day to day in the lives of our students and the lives of our graduates. We also have a chance tonight to think about the future of our entire state and what that means for those who will come after us. Every decision that the eventual winner of the election makes will shape the future for decades to come. And just as we here at UCR try to make that shaping process optimal, we certainly hope that the candidates will do the same. So I am eager to get on with the festivities. It's my extreme pleasure to introduce to you the Dean of our School of Public Policy, Anil Dalelekar, who will introduce our court moderators.
Thank you, Chancellor Wilcox, and good evening, everyone. We are honored here at the UCR School of Public Policy to be hosting tonight's debate amongst the 4 Attorney General candidates. This special event would not have happened without the generous support of Best, and Krieger. So thank you for your involvement, BB&K. We are grateful as well to the UCR Office of Governmental and Community Relations, as well as the Robert Presley Center for Crime and Justice Studies in the School of Public Policy. They are both co-hosting this event along with the School of Public Policy. Thank you for your partnership. Additionally, I would like to take a moment to recognize a couple of special guests who are here with us this evening. We are honored to have Michael Hestrin, District Attorney for the Riverside County. We also have the Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor of UCR, Cindy Larive, and the Vice Chancellor of Development and Advancement, Peter Hayashida. I saw him earlier. Thank you all for being with us tonight. And with that, I would like to now introduce the 2 moderators for the debate tonight. Our first moderator is Dr. Paulette Brown-Hinds. She is the publisher of Black Voice News and founder of Voice Media Ventures, a strategic media and content creation firm. Our second moderator who is sitting next to Dr. Brown-Hinds is Mr. Grover Trask. He has served 6 terms, not quite 37 years, 6 terms as Riverside County District Attorney and over 32 years as a career prosecutor. Without further ado, let me welcome them to the stage, and we will get started with tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Good evening, everyone. It's a great night. But before we begin the debate, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone in attendance of UCR's principles of community. At our university, we strive for mutual respect among our guests, audience, and community members. And we work to make sure that our campus is a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. We value freedom of speech, and we also set the examples of being respectful for others, regardless of differences in opinion. We also understand that just because we might disagree with others' points of view, it does not mean that they're any less deserving of our respect, courtesy, and professionalism. So let's all engage in civil discourse and maintain communication that aligns with UCR's principles of community. And thank you all for being exemplars of this mutual respect throughout today's great event. Having said that, again, it's my pleasure to introduce the candidates. And as I introduce your name, I'd appreciate you to attend the debate stage, beginning with California Attorney General Xavier Becerra. Former Superior Court Judge Stephen Bailey. Attorney Eric Early. And California Insurance Commissioner Dave Jones. Gentlemen, you may be seated. Now, finally, I would like to also introduce our timekeeper, a very important person in this debate. UCR public policy student, Lizette Kapoor. Now, she will notify us once 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and 2 minutes has been reached. And please note, if a candidate continues to exceed his time limit, Lizette will hold up a sign indicating time's up. And of course, we will turn off his mic.
Each candidate will now begin with a 2-minute opening statement. By a random draw, Judge Bailey will speak first.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Public Policy School for putting this event on today. We appreciate this opportunity to articulate our views as to what the next California Attorney General will do once they take office. I served 8.5 years as a Superior Court judge here in California. During that period of time, I saw many of the case types that we confront every single day in this state. I had 20 years as a practicing attorney in this state. During that period of time, I was honored by the State Bar to be a certified specialist in criminal law. I was born in this state. I grew up in this state. I went to school in this state. I graduated from California State University in Sacramento several years ago. I've raised 3 kids in this state. There was a day when California was called the Golden State. Unfortunately, the luster has worn off our state. I am here talking to you tonight to let you know that a new Attorney General is coming in 2019, and that Attorney General is going to be focused on the issues of public safety. Our citizens of this state deserve the opportunity to be safe in their properties and their homes, to be not have to feel that they're in jeopardy when they go out on the streets. I want my kids and my grandkids to be able to reside in this state. We have created a public safety nightmare in this state by allowing the release of some 40,000 inmates so far, and the current administration intends to release even more. We cannot afford that. We need a different direction in California. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Bailey. Attorney General Becerra.
I want to thank the Chancellor and all the UC Riverside community for letting us be here today. I want to thank my opponents who are here as well. If I'm doing my job right, I am protecting California families. I'm protecting you. I'm protecting our values, and I'm protecting our resources. In fact, I'm protecting our resourcefulness as a state. That's what's made us the economic engine for the entire country. Indeed, now we've surpassed Great Britain and become the 5th largest economy in the world. It's not because we sit back, it's because we take action. Job one for the Attorney General has to be public safety. Going after the wrongdoers, the lawbreakers, and holding them accountable. That's why I'm winning as I fight for you every day against the sex traffickers and drug traffickers, against the corrupt public officials, against the corporate wrongdoers, against the people who would fraudulently take advantage of our seniors and our immigrant community. And I'm out there to defend them because we need to continue to create the jobs that keep us strong. If I'm doing my job right, then I'll make sure that today, like a generation ago, when my father, a construction worker, and my mother, a clerical worker, had a chance to buy a home, send their 4 kids to college for the first time, and then retire in dignity. Well, if I'm doing my job right, that will apply today to today's construction worker and today's clerical worker who are married, just as well as anyone who's about to graduate from UC Riverside. We must make sure that that dream that has made America so strong is there for everyone. And it's my job to defend the values and the resources that you have put on the table to give our community, our state, a chance to be the economic leader and the 5th largest economy in the world. Thank you.
Mr. Early.
Hi, I'm Eric Early. I'm running to become Attorney General of the once and future great state of California. I want to thank the Chancellor very much for having us here, and I want to thank the Dean for reaching out to us. This is a high honor here. And, you know, as the Chancellor said, this is not only about today, this is about the future. You know, I'm so proud that my son is here today, and my daughter's here today, and my daughter-in-law is here today, and because I do this not just for our generation, I do this for the future generations as well. I'm not a politician. In fact, I'm the only one who's not a professional politician in this race. I'm an attorney. I own a law firm and run a law firm of 25 people. We do business litigation in every court in this state, in Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Florida. And Sacramento is in some deep and serious trouble, and that's why I stepped up in this race. It's time for a new voice. It's time for new thoughts. It's time for new energy. It's time for new blood in Sacramento, that tired old town up north that's been run really very much into the ground by this professional political class. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to be a professional politician to run for office. In fact, this is a land of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the founders designed this wonderful country of ours for people to come out from the private sector to bring their knowledge and their energy and what they can to government to make government better for all. And that's why I'm running in this race. You know, I have very fond memories of Riverside. I tried a big case out here. My law partner, Billy Wright's here. And we got a great result. We stayed in the Mission Inn for 2 months, and it's just great to be here. And it's great to see everybody, and I look forward to talking today. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, University of California, Riverside, for hosting this debate. Whether it's consumer protection, public safety, battling discrimination, or protecting the environment, the Attorney General's office touches Californians profoundly. And we need an Attorney General with experience, vision, and independence to confront the challenges we face as Californians. And that's why I'm running for the office of Attorney General. I've been working throughout my entire life to prepare myself for this position. I started my career as a legal aid lawyer, representing low-income Californians, often forgotten by the legal system. I've served as special assistant to Attorney General Janet Reno. At the local level, I've been a city council member working on crime prevention strategies, and I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually led a statewide consumer protection and law enforcement agency for over 7.5 years, fighting against fraud and protecting consumers. As a progressive Democrat, I'll resist President Trump, but there's more to the Office of Attorney General than just suing Trump. And here's what the San Jose Mercury newspaper said when they endorsed me about that. We had higher hopes for Mr. Becerra when he was appointed, but beyond his legal challenges to Trump, he's often been a huge disappointment. In contrast, Jones understands the multiple demands of the office and will provide much needed political independence. State residents deserve nothing less. On critical issue after critical issue, the current Attorney General has been absent, whether it's holding ExxonMobil accountable for lying about climate change, or seizing guns from the 10,000 persons who by law shouldn't have them, or making sure the database is up and running that pharmacists and doctors need to check to make sure they're not overprescribing prescriptions. He spent his entire career in Washington, D.C. Until his appointment, he hadn't practiced law since 1992. He's taking contributions from the oil industry, the insurance industry, and the tobacco industry. We need an Attorney General that's independent. I will resist Trump, but I will also do the other important work of the Attorney General's office. I'm independent, beholden to no one, and that's what we need in the Office of Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your opening statements. Hello.
There you go.
Okay. For the first 5 questions, testing. Testing 1, 2, 3, okay. For the first 5 questions, each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. The Attorney General is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of California, constitutionally elected and directly accountable to the people. In terms of your public safety responsibilities, what is your #1 priority? Commissioner Jones.
My #1 priority is criminal justice reform. We've engaged in this state, as many other states have, in incarcerating people for non-serious, nonviolent crimes for extraordinary periods of time. Now, I'm one of the only law enforcement officials to support Prop 47, prison realignment, amending 3 strikes. We now have an opportunity to make sure, as people are coming out of the prisons back in the community, that they're successful. I want to focus on reentry and rehabilitation programs, mental health treatment, substance use treatment, job training, jobs. If we don't do this, the science tells us, the evidence tells us that people will reoffend, re-victimize, and cause great harm. So as Attorney General, I think we have to focus on making sure that people are successful when they return to the community. And I'll focus on the programs necessary to assist them in that return. So they can be successful, we can reduce recidivism, and make sure we don't go back to the bad old days of building more prisons instead of schools.
Thank you.
Well, on the issue of public safety is the #1 job for any responsible Attorney General. That would be my #1 job. You know, crime has been on the rise in this state. We've had this spate of laws that have, and propositions that have emptied out our prisons of violent felons long before their times expire. AB 109, Proposition 47, Proposition 57. Proposition 47, which was voted on by the electorate, was sold to us by the last Attorney General as the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. So of course we all went and we want safe neighborhoods and schools. What does that proposition allow now? It raised the amount that you could steal on any occurrence to $950. So we have criminals all over this state stealing up to $950. There have been stories of some with calculators. They get a slap on the wrist. Law enforcement is getting laughed at by these people. Law enforcement can't prosecute them. The store owners who I've spoken to up and down the state can't prosecute these people. You know, just to store it. Well, my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney General Becerra.
Nothing more important than protecting the families of California. Every day when our children go to school, when you leave for work, if you're on the freeway or in the workplace, you should know you're going to be safe. The job of law enforcement, whether it's at the local level or at the state, is to provide you that public safety. Public safety, by the way, also means that everyone should be able to feel like they can trust the people that we have in uniform that are there to provide the safety. But let me tell you one of the most important things that we do in California that no one else does. We remove guns from the hands of those who are felons and dangerous people. Everyone talks about it in Washington, D.C. We do it. Last year, 3,700 guns were removed from the hands of dangerous people and felons. Over the last 5 years, more than 18,000 weapons. Dave Jones likes to criticize and the work that my special agents do in removing guns. What he fails to report is that while there's 10,000 still that we have to go out there and find, there would have been 47,000 over the last 5 years had we not done the work of removing those weapons. That's our job.
Judge Bailey?
My number one priority as your new Attorney General is to protect our neighborhoods and to protect our kids and our grandkids. Quite frankly, you know, we hear a lot of talk coming out of Sacramento, some off this podium, about how everybody's committed to public safety. But the bottom line is, crime's gone up 24% during the tenure that these people in Sacramento have been running our state. Their idea of reform is to allow sex offenders out of prison early. Their idea of reform and nonviolence is domestic violence. People who commit domestic violence being a nonviolent crime. I don't know how many of you here think that domestic violence is nonviolent. Quite frankly, we have a problem in Sacramento. We need a new Attorney General. I will be that Attorney General, and my focus is on protecting you.
Gentlemen, name 2 personal qualities you have, other than your professional background and experience, that would help voters decide you are the best candidate to be California's Chief Law Enforcement Officer. We'll begin with Mr. Early.
Thank you. 2 qualities. First of all, I care deeply about people of all races, creeds, colors, nationalities, and sexual orientation. If you're a law-abiding citizen in our state, you'll have no better friend in government than me. If you're not, I'm not going to be your friend. Another quality, I'm an incredibly hardworking person. That's how I've been able to build with my law partners an incredibly successful law firm that's been voted best in the country, boutique firm of the year by U.S. News and World Report the last 2 years. I want to get up there. I take this stuff seriously. When you come from the private sector, when you have clients who pay your bills, I want you guys, I want the people of California to be my clients and be my bosses. I want to work for you. It's not something that anybody else on this stage really has any experience with. Hard work and deep concern and care for people and the people of our great state of California. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
I'm motivated by making a difference, and that has been a hallmark of my public service career. And that's why I care so passionately about criminal justice reform, whether it's more transparency and accountability in policing or making sure we have rehab and reentry programs for people coming out of the corrections system. But in addition, another personal trait is I bring people together from all walks of life to get the job done. And we're going to need to do that to confront all of the challenges associated with criminal justice reform. We need to bring every stakeholder into the room. That means advocates, that means law enforcement, that means experts in community-based programs, experts in corrections. Everyone is going to need to pull together to make sure we do everything we can to make sure those coming out of the correction system can be successful. If we aren't successful, if they're not successful, then they will reoffend, crime rates will go up, and unfortunately the public will demand we start investing in longer sentences and more prisons again. So that's why I want to focus on those 2 things, my public commitment and also...
Thank you. Judge Bailey?
I spent 8.5 years as a judge, and one of the qualities, the main quality of being a judge is being fair and being impartial. Looking at the facts, determining what the law is, and applying the facts in the law. That's what makes me different than any of these people on the stage today. Quite frankly, what California needs in an Attorney General is one that doesn't look at your color, your race, your sexual orientation, but one who looks at applying the law fairly across the board so that regardless of who you are, whether you're rich or poor, the law is applied exactly the same way. And those are the qualities that I will bring as your new Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra.
To me, honesty is perhaps the most important thing you can strive to be as you take an elected office, because you're in the public's eye, and it is tough to trust politicians. And so I make every effort to give people the sense that you can trust what I say. I learned a long time ago from my parents, you treat people with respect. But I learned as I grew that you earn respect. I intend to try to earn that respect. The second thing I believe in is making sure that you are educated. While that may not be a trait in my home, where my father got to the 6th grade, where he couldn't walk into restaurants because of the signs that said no dogs or Mexicans allowed. My mother, who came to this country at 18 when she married my father, in those days a woman wasn't really given much of a chance to go to college. In my family, education is a trait, and you teach it and you put it in the DNA of your children. But if I can't say that, then I'll say ganas. Look it up in the dictionary, G-A-N-A-S. It means grit and determination.
Thank you.
As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, what will you do personally to work with the 58 elected sheriffs and the 58 elected district attorneys as partners in the administration of criminal justice, including attending their annual meetings? And Attorney General Becerra.
I'll do what I've been doing for the last year and 4 months that I've been the Attorney General. I've been meeting with the district attorneys, I've been meeting with the sheriffs, I've been meeting with the chiefs of police, and I've been meeting with the police officers associations throughout the state of California, in Sacramento and in their locations. And I've been saying to them, I'm here, as I said to you, I want to be honest, we may not agree on everything, but let's talk, let's figure out how we work together, because law enforcement is a team effort. You cannot do it alone. And I would do that not just with our local and state law enforcement officials. I'm doing that right now with our U.S. attorneys, and I'm doing that with ICE and with FBI and DEA, because as much as people hear and read about these fights with the federal government, the reality is day in, day out, my Department of Justice and my Division of Law Enforcement are working day to day with law enforcement from the federal, state, to the local level, as it should be, because as I said, job one is public safety.
Judge Bailey.
As your new Attorney General, law enforcement, our sheriffs, district attorneys, chiefs of police, and the rank and file officers that are out on your streets are going to have a seat at the table to help formulate the policy of how California is going to proceed in the future. Quite frankly, where we are today is that our law enforcement professionals do not have a seat at the table. Talking to them isn't the same as listening to them. As your new Attorney General, I will be listening to our law enforcement professionals. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
As insurance commissioner, I already work with the sheriffs and district attorneys. My department investigates fraud. We've arrested over 7,500 people under my commissionership and obtained just about as many convictions, including the federal conviction of Senator Ron Calderon for public corruption. That was our investigation. But it's also important to meet with public defenders, the ACLU, the Innocence Project, so all the stakeholders are participating in making policy. And it's important to hold law enforcement accountable when it crosses the line. Sadly, that hasn't happened with the Attorney General's office. There's only 3 cases of civil rights investigations that have been opened in the history of the office for police misconduct. We can do better. We need more transparency. We need more accountability. Law enforcement is a tough job, and most people do the job well, they do it right. But for those that don't, it's the responsibility of the Attorney General to hold them accountable.
I want law enforcement to again have, after many, many years, a friend in the Attorney General's office, because they don't have one now. They didn't have one before Mr. Becerra. They didn't have one before her. I've been meeting with chiefs and sheriffs and rank and file up and down our great state, from San Diego in the south, Siskiyou County up north. These are some of the best and brightest and most dedicated people you'll ever meet. You wouldn't know that if you read some of the media. All we ever hear about is the 0.0001% when something goes wrong, and not the 50,000 acts of bravery and kindness that they do every day. And I've been endorsed, like I said, till October of last year, I was never a politician before. I've been endorsed by Steve Cooley, the former district attorney of Los Angeles County, who I'm working very closely in this race with. I've been endorsed by Sheriff Sandra Hutchins of Orange County, who Mr. Becerra had the temerity to issue a veiled threat to. I've been endorsed by Sheriff John Lope from up in Siskiyou County. You want to meet a modern John Wayne, just meet John Lope. I'll have an advisory council to work with, made up of law enforcement on all the major law enforcement issues of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. The Attorney General has filed over 30 lawsuits against President Trump and the federal government. Is this a fundamental partisan, political, and policy shift from the traditional statutory duties of the Attorney General? And we'll start with Judge Bailey.
I'm critical of the current Attorney General's focus on every Twitter that comes out of the White House. Everything that happens in Washington doesn't require a lawsuit by the state of California. And we've got a number of lawsuits that are just, quite frankly, frivolous, that have no purpose, no reason that we should expect success out of them. And moreover, you and those of you who are about to graduate are going to end up paying for. It's time to have an Attorney General whose focus is on your day-to-day problems, on protecting you on your streets and in your neighborhoods. Not in being focused on what's going on in Washington, D.C. I'm going to look at those lawsuits. There are a number of them that need to just go away and be dismissed. And I intend to look at the lawsuits once I become Attorney General in January, and we are going to dismiss a goodly number.
Commissioner Jones.
I believe it's important that California's Attorney General stands up for California and Californians. And I would resist Trump and file lawsuits in order to defend California values. But there's more to the office of Attorney General than just suing Trump. The Attorney General currently has failed to take away guns from 10,000 individuals who by law shouldn't have them. That's not a criticism of the men and women that do that work in his office. It's a criticism of him and a lack of leadership in making sure there are enough officers doing that work. He's failed to make sure that the database was up and running in a timely way so doctors could check it to make sure they're not overprescribing opioids. He's failed to make sure that we go after ExxonMobil, as New York and Massachusetts Attorney General's done, for denying climate change. There's a long, long list of things that need to be done that are not getting done because of the politicization of the opposition to Trump. Resist Trump? Absolutely. But also do the rest of the job of Attorney General.
Mr. Early.
Said about taking guns away from violent felons. The Republicans in the state legislature earmarked $25 million for the AG's office to go through this list. It's called the APPS system. Get the guns from the violent felons and those who haven't had guns. He's been AWOL on this. Yes, he's done it in bits and spurts. We have law enforcement and Republican congressmen or legislators up there who want to go after those guns. On the lawsuits against the Trump administration, it's an outrage. This has turned into the Trump administration does something, you wake up the next morning, there's a lawsuit. Mr. Becerra has been in office for a little over a year. He wasn't elected. There have been 32 lawsuits filed. Who's paying for those lawsuits? All taxpayers and the citizens of California. In fact, I'd like to know the number and the amount that those lawsuits are costing us. Many of those lawsuits should never have been filed. Mr. Becerra wants to be Attorney General of the resistance movement. God bless you. But he's presently the Attorney General of the state of California. And there are many people in California who do not agree with what is going on.
Thank you. Attorney General Becerra.
The best test on any lawsuit is whether you're still in court. 32 lawsuits, we're still in court. In fact, we have 17 victories in those 32 lawsuits to date. And we have one for women because Donald Trump was trying to take away their right to have birth control. under the Affordable Care Act, and we won a nationwide injunction to keep that in place. We won a nationwide injunction to make sure that anyone in this country who wishes to serve the military can do so, even if they're transgender. And we won a nationwide injunction to make sure that President Trump's efforts to kill the DACA program did not go forward. And today the DACA students are here. The proof is in the pudding. We've proven that every one of our lawsuits, and you didn't hear them say which one they would ever get rid of, but every one of those 32 is to protect your interests.
Ten years ago, California voters changed the state constitution by enacting the Victims' Bill of Rights, including the constitutional right that public safety and the safety of victims shall be the primary consideration. Do you support this constitutional policy in the administration of the criminal justice system? Commissioner Jones.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that victims' rights be respected, that victims be consulted during the course of prosecutions and in sentencing, and that everything be done to try to provide restitution. But at the same time, the efforts to incarcerate our way out of levels of crime in California failed. The war on drugs failed. It resulted in the mass incarceration of largely people of color who we ripped out of communities, put in prisons for long periods of time, stamped with a felony brand, then sent back to the community where they couldn't get a job, couldn't find housing, couldn't succeed. So I do support criminal justice reform. I do think it's critically important that we provide reentry and rehabilitation programs for people coming out of the corrections setting. And that's what I'm going to focus on as Attorney General. Now, that doesn't mean doing so at the exclusion of victims, but you've got to strike a balance. And the balance, historically, has been way, way, way on the side of incarcerating non-serious, non-violent criminals and making things worse. And so I think we owe it to these communities to make sure that people can return.
Attorney General Becerra.
Absolutely, I support the Victims' Bill of Rights. But I think what's more important to recognize is that we shouldn't always have to protect a victim. We should prevent them from being victims. And that's why my job, as I said before, is to reach out to local law enforcement and talk to them, because we've been taking action. In Riverside, we took down criminal gang activity. In Bakersfield, we took down criminal gang activity. In Riverside and San Bernardino, in the two Inland Empire counties, we took down gang activity. In Tulare County, we brought down a sex trafficking ring. In LA County, we did another action, working with LA County Sheriff to take down a gang that was operating. The best thing we can do is stop them from being victims. And we must also break this school to prison pipeline so we can send kids to college, not to prison.
Judge Bailey. Judge Bailey.
Thank you. I stand with the victims of crime. In fact, I've been endorsed by Crime Victims United in this state. You know, the problem with all the smoke and the mirrors that are being shown here tonight about reform is that the result of what is called reform has resulted in a 24% increase in crime. Yearly, crime is going up, in some places by double digits. Serious and violent crimes are going up. The policies that are going forward out of Sacramento, quite frankly, aren't working. We need to go in a different direction. Thank you.
Mr. Bailey.
We absolutely have to protect our victims. We have to show them the faith, the love, and the support that they deserve. And that's why we have to make sure there are no more victims in this state. And what Mr. Becerra says about his tough law on law enforcement is just wrong when you look at the facts and you look at what he's done. And I'll give you a story I just heard the other day. An insurance adjuster came to one of my law partners' houses who had just been broken into. And the insurance adjuster goes from house to house when there's a break and said, it's a result of these laws of emptying the prisons. We're seeing this all over the state with more and more crime. We have to protect people. We have to relook at Proposition 47 and Proposition 57, and we have to support our law enforcement. And we have to be tough on crime, and these folks have to know that if they commit a crime, there's going to be a penalty to pay, because right now, as I said, Proposition 47, go out and steal $950, no penalty.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for briefly and succinctly answering our 1-minute response questions. Now we're going to turn to allowing you to have 2 minutes on the following questions. You've all talked in some detail about AB 109, and I thought perhaps we should ask a question now about that. In 2011, 7 years ago, the legislature enacted AB 109, the 800-page Public Safety Realignment Act. Tens of thousands of convicted felons involving nonviolent, non-serious crimes, regardless of their prior record, and some sex offenders became the 58 counties' responsibility from the state prisons. Subsequently, in 2014 and 2016, Prop 47 and Prop 57 were implemented to enhance AB 109's ongoing decarceration efforts. What is your position on the Public Safety Realignment Act, Proposition 47 and 57, a California's new decarceration era for decarceration era for corrections and rehabilitations, with the current analysis indicating that the recidivism rate has not gone down? Mr. Early.
I've been talking about this most of the night. AB 109, just for the uninitiated, that sent prisoners from our state prisons to jails in counties all around the state. It realigned where they went. And they went to these jails, to the local communities. It was an unfunded mandate. There was no money given to these local communities to handle them. Just speak to law enforcement up and down the state. They're apoplectic about this. It's caused a mess in our state jail system now. Proposition 47, I talked to you about. Proposition 57 is the one that 2 months ago a state court judge said, well, great, this allows, there's nothing in here that prevents the early release on parole of violent sex offenders, which are estimated to be about 10,000 of them in our state. I don't think anybody in this audience wants the early release of these people. These folks who've been in control of Sacramento for years and years are turning California into a criminal's paradise. And when it comes to your neighborhood, and hopefully it never will, you know that we have to make a change. We have to protect our citizens. That's job number one for me. And we have to look at ways to either amend or replace Proposition 47, Proposition 57, change AB 109. The pretext given is that the prisons are too full. They need to empty up prison beds. We need to look to the private sector to build more prisons. And we also have to start talking to other states. It's been tried in the past. We have to do it more seriously. In Nevada, for example, it's $15,000 a bed for a prisoner. Here they estimate it's $75,000 a bed. We need to start perhaps negotiating with other states to see if we can move these folks to other states and open up more prison beds here, because you don't want one of these violent offenders who's been decarcerated, as the questioner said, Mr. Trask said, to come to your neighborhood. I want to protect you. I want to protect your families. And I want to protect our children in their schools. When I was a young dad, I could drop my kids off in school and not worry that something was going to go wrong. It's something we're concerned about now, and I have ideas on how to deal with it. Thank you.
Judge Bailey.
Criminal justice reform, AB 109, Prop 36, Prop 109, or not Prop 109, Prop 47, Prop 57. The end result is increase in crime, unsafe streets, quite frankly, unsafe schools. Now, we can gloss over it, talk about it, get into the weeds. Part of those weeds are that when AB 109 passed, it filled up our county jails by moving people from state prison down to the county jails. But worse yet, what it did was mean longer terms of incarceration in facilities that were never built for it. Consequently, those facilities are filling up. People are being pushed back to the street. That's why your streets aren't safe. Nonviolent crime to some of these people up here means domestic violence is a nonviolent crime. Human trafficking is a nonviolent crime. Rape of an unconscious person is a nonviolent crime. In my book, and I think in most of yours, those are violent crimes. California has a failed policy. It needs to be turned around. We have to go in a different direction, or our streets and our schools are going to be truly unsafe.
Commissioner Jones.
So a little bit of historical context is in order. California, like every other state in the nation, launched a war on drugs and went about the task of arresting people for nonviolent, non-serious possessory offenses and putting people in prison for inordinately long periods of time, mostly but not exclusively people of color. As a result, the United States Supreme Court decided that California's prisons were overcrowded and violating the United States Constitution. It got so bad, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the state of California to remedy this situation. So, prison realignment, amending 3 strikes, Prop 47, Prop 57, all of these criminal justice reforms enacted by the legislature or by the voters. I support them because I think it was a huge mistake to launch this war on drugs and engage in the mass incarceration of huge numbers of our population. However, we do have to support the people that are coming out, and that's why I'm campaigning on and why I, as Attorney General, will focus on reentry and rehabilitation programs, mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, job training, jobs, education, housing for people that are coming out of the system. If we don't do this, they will reoffend. They will re-victimize. The evidence is quite clear. But if we do support them and provide them the supports that they need, then many of them won't. Now, should we tweak some of these laws because they were overly inclusive with regard to defining what was non-serious and non-violent? Certainly, no question. And that's something that I'll support as Attorney General also. But the bigger picture here is that levels of crime are still far lower than they were at their height in the 90s. They will rise if we don't support people that are returning to communities. People are going to come out of prison. People are going to come out of jail. Now, one area where I disagree with the governor is on how much money should go to counties to support these programs to build jails. I viewed Prop 47's language saying that savings in the state prison system ought to go to counties as being very important. The governor scored that very low. I would have argued for more money. It's true. We need more resources at the local level. I'll support that.
Attorney General Becerra.
I don't think there's anyone who's in this room who would say that if you are a serious offender, you should be locked up. What happens in between is what we're really grappling with, because we already have the largest prison population in the country, and our country has the largest prison population in the world. And that's not getting any better. And so let's be real. The most important thing we could do is, as I said before, is prevent folks from becoming the youthful offenders that become the adult serial killers, the adult violent offenders. And if we do that, we save ourselves so much money. My first job as an attorney was representing low-income folks who were mentally ill, who didn't have the resources to fight for themselves. I happened to become an attorney representing them at a time when we were going through a process called deinstitutionalization, where we decided, you know what, with the medications that we have, we can come up with community programs to let those who are mentally ill function in our communities, so long as we provide them with the resources and the medication that they need. So we let them out of the institutions, which was good. The bad part, we didn't provide the community support. And lo and behold, you saw the rise of the homeless population in America. If we fail to provide the community resources to those low-level offenders who've not committed violent crimes, at the community level, they'll never integrate. And if they don't integrate, they will become hardened. And so our lesson should be this: let's put our money where our mouth is. If we want low-level offenders not to become the hardened criminals, then let's put the community resources behind them. I'll leave you with one final fact. You send a young man who's 17 years old to a youthful offender facility for 1 year, you could have sent that young man to UC Riverside to get his undergraduate degree for 4 years and sent him on to graduate school for another 4 years for the same price as 1 year of a youthful offender facility. It's time to invest early, not when they become offenders.
The Attorney General has sued the federal government for its alleged unconstitutional immigration policies, and in turn, as a result of California's 2017 SB 54 Values Act, creating a sanctuary state, the U.S. Attorney General is now suing California for attempting to preempt federal law, leading a number of California cities to disregard SB 54. As Attorney General, how would you resolve these policy and legal conflicts? We'll begin with Judge Bailey.
I can say that pretty succinctly. I believe that immigration policy is the full purview of the federal government. It's not an issue for the state government. And what we did here in California in SB 54 is create not a sanctuary state, but a sanctuary for criminals. Because the only people protected by that legislation are those criminals who are now being let out and sent back into your neighborhoods. Worse yet, those people who are undocumented immigrants in our communities, who are not committing crimes, are the collateral damage from the failed, foolish policy that came out of Sacramento called sanctuary state. I believe it's unconstitutional. As your new Attorney General, I'm going to tell the courts it's unconstitutional. I think that as an officer of the court, I have that obligation, and I will pledge that that's what I will do as your new Attorney General.
Commissioner Jones.
So I oppose the Trump administration's policies designed to try to deport undocumented persons from the state of California. When you think about it, unless your forebears were brought here in chains or you're descendant of Native Americans, we're all immigrants. What's happening now, though, is the federal administration is tearing people from their neighborhoods, from their schools, from their workplaces, whose only crime, quote unquote, is that they came here, as all of our forebears had, looking for economic opportunity and political freedom. SB 54 was carefully crafted to make sure that it did not intrude upon the federal government's responsibilities on immigration. It's simply a lie for Sessions to argue that it does. It simply says that the state and local law enforcement instrumentalities will not be an arm of the federal government for purposes of deportation. It does allow state and local law enforcement to talk to ICE and federal immigration authorities about serious violent felons. It does allow jailers to talk to ICE about serious violent undocumented felons. So to suggest that somehow this is impeding federal immigration authority is just not true. So as Attorney General, I will defend the constitutionality of the sanctuary city and sanctuary state laws. But beyond that, I'll do everything I can to try to protect California from these deportations. And that means investigating facilities used by ICE that are state facilities or county facilities to detain people. And we heard the horrible story in Texas of the young lady that was deprived access to an abortion because she was in an ICE facility. It's those sorts of constitutional rights being violated by ICE that the state attorney general needs to investigate and enforce against if state facilities are being used. So I feel very strongly about this. We are a state of immigrants. We are a state that prizes diversity. Immigrants are a huge part of our success in our economy. And I will do everything I can to stand with the immigrant community against the intrusion of the federal government, but I'll do it in a lawful, constitutional way.
Thank you. Attorney General Becerra.
I'm the son of immigrants. Maybe it's just poetic justice that the person who's contesting Donald Trump and A.G. Sessions is the Attorney General, the 33rd Attorney General for the state of California, who is a son of immigrants, to defend the rights of families who work very hard, like my parents did, to make California better. As I said to you before, I come to this position with ganas, grit and determination, to represent the people like my parents who worked hard to build this state. I will defend them with every fiber in my body because I know what my parents did, and I know what immigrants are doing today. I take offense to what some of my opponents say about how they characterize SB 54 and the immigrants. There is no law in the state of California that says that a criminal, a felon, a dangerous person will be protected under some sanctuary jurisdiction by the state of California. There is no law that says the state of California can overrule the federal government when it comes to immigration. As the Attorney General for our state, I make sure that ICE has the right to do immigration as it sees fit. I may not like it, but I respect it because I understand that that is under the federal government's purview. But the federal government does not have purview over the way we do our public safety. And the federal government cannot tell our police and sheriff and law enforcement authorities how to do their work. And so, therefore, the federal government can't tell us how to have our cops operate on the streets. I will defend our sanctuary jurisdiction legislation because I'm not defending a law. I'm defending my parents. And I will do that all the time. Maybe it's poetic justice, but it's going to be a great victory at the end of the day when we defend the rights of people to show that they grow this country, the economy, and they do it loving what they've done for this great nation.
I am the son of legal immigrants to the greatest country that God ever created, this country. So please don't ever let anybody tell you that Republicans hate immigrants, because by that notion, I hate my parents, and I can assure you I don't hate my parents. Listen, the sanctuary state law violates the U.S. Constitution. That's just the law. It violates the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. This is based on a case, ironically enough, that was brought by the Obama administration against the state of Arizona. And the U.S. Supreme Court during the time of the Obama administration said that the federal government and not the states control immigration. And that's why the Sessions lawsuit is on solid footing. And that's why I'm against the sanctuary state law, because I am not going to violate the U.S. Constitution. You know, Mr. Becerra, by all his actions, does not believe in borders. We cannot take in any more illegal immigrants. We are essentially a financially bankrupt state. It's costing our state a fortune. We welcome legal immigrants from any place on this planet. You know, there's a prairie fire going on in this state right now. You don't read about it too much in the media. It's spreading around Southern California. It's now spread up Northern California. Cities are opting out of the sanctuary state law, or cities are joining in the Sessions lawsuit. And this is what happens, you know, when one-party rule has been in power too long, and they start issuing arrogant laws, and the people are taking democracy in their own hands. The sanctuary state law should be called the Illegal Immigrant Felon Protection Act, because that's all it is being used to do, is protect those who came here illegally and have been committing crimes since they got here. Nobody's trying to deport our 2 million immigrants here. I know there was crazy rhetoric during the presidential race. If anybody tries to deport those, I will stop it from happening.
Thank you.
A federal court and then a California court in 2012 permanently stayed executions on drug protocol procedure due process grounds, blocking and stalling the backlog of 747 defendants on death row. To help remedy this backlog, the voters passed Proposition 66, the Death Penalty Reform and Savings Act of 2016, abrogating the need for such injunctions. In 2017, the California Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of Prop 66. The state court, as a direct result of Prop 66, dismissed the death penalty injunction. While the federal stay is still technically in existence as of today, Prop 66 has effectively rendered this identical federal stay moot. The Attorney General has yet to file a motion for dismissal. As Attorney General, what, if any, action would you take in removing the federal stay in question in an effort to uphold the people's will, the intent of Prop 66, and reduce California's death penalty backlog? Attorney General Becerra.
So interesting, Mr. Trask. On the same ballot in November of 2016 that Prop 66 was on, Prop 63 was on as well, and that would have abolished the death penalty. I voted for Prop 63. 3 weeks later, Governor Brown publicly nominated me to be the next Attorney General. And on January the 23rd of 2017, I was sworn in. The moment I took the oath of office, I swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States of California and the laws of our state, including the death penalty. And so when it came time to defend Prop 66 against attacks in court, that's what I did. And that's what I will continue to do, because that is my obligation. Even though I voted for Prop 63, I know my responsibility. Before you lift your arm, you better be prepared to know what it means to be the chief law enforcement officer for the state of California. And so I'm doing my duty. But I also recognize that there are more than 130 people who've sat on death row and subsequently been released or acquitted of the charges that put them on death row. And I have made it clear to my team of lawyers, who are excellent attorneys when it comes to criminal defense and criminal prosecution, that we will make sure that we prosecute fairly and effectively. But if it's the death penalty, there can be no errors. I am not interested in having someone say to me, you made a mistake and you took a life. But we have a death penalty, and it's my job as the Attorney General to uphold it, and that's what I will do.
Mr. Early.
I strongly support the death penalty. It's been used in name only in this state for I can't remember how many years. Listen, we're here to stop violent criminals from doing heinous crimes against our people. We're here to protect our victims. The victims, many of whom have been waiting for years and years and years for the death penalty to actually be used. We need to put some teeth into that law again. We need to stop the delays from prosecution through enforcement of the penalty. We actually have to enforce the penalty. We have to be incredibly careful, and the Attorney General's office has over 1,000 lawyers in it, and they will be looking very carefully to make sure there are no mistakes that fall through the cracks. We have DNA evidence now. We have all kinds of ways to look at this, but we can't have the name death penalty in name only and not use it. It's been voted on and supported by the people. We're here to uphold the will of the people, and I will do that.
Mr. Jones.
I oppose the death penalty. I am deeply concerned that because our criminal justice system at heart is a human system and humans make mistakes, that we could end up putting someone to death in error. One doesn't have to look very far to find case after case of people exonerated who are sitting on death row, who are mistakenly convicted and then released. So I oppose the death penalty. Now, I'm surprised to hear my opponent, Mr. Becerra, say that he voted for Prop 63, because at his confirmation hearing, he said he supported the death penalty. And as a congressman, he voted to add the death penalty to some 24 federal crimes. So this is a disagreement between us. However, as Attorney General, I'm sworn to uphold the law. And the law of the land is, in California, that the death penalty is available as a part of a prosecution, and it can be meted out as a part of a sentence. Now, I also opposed the ballot measure that the district attorney alluded to a moment ago that would accelerate the death penalty, again, because of my fear and concern of making a mistake. But the voters enacted that ballot measure, and although the California Supreme Court, in my view, wrongly decided and made an error in that decision, they have upheld that ballot measure. So I will enforce it. Now, the specific question you asked, though, was what about the federal stay order? My understanding is that the federal stay order is not simply premised on state law, but it's also premised on federal law. So I would take a look at the order, see whether in fact that was the case. If it is the case, I don't know that I would move to dismiss it. If it's solely premised on state law and state constitutional issues, well, the new proposition has remedied that, and so I would move to dismiss it. I cite this to you in infinite excruciating detail because it is important that you have an experienced lawyer handling these sorts of questions. And I have personal beliefs, and I'm passionate about them, and as your Attorney General, I will fight to repeal the death penalty, which is a big difference between Mr. Becerra and I. But I will also follow the law.
Judge Bailey.
Thank you. I very much support the death penalty. I am the only one on this stage, quite frankly, in my 19, almost 20 years as a practicing lawyer in the state, who has actually represented someone on death row. I've talked to them. I've understood what and why they committed the crimes. And I'll tell you, there are some people who just can never be trusted to remain on our streets. That's why I support the death penalty, because I've seen it from the inside. You know, quite frankly, when I'm elected Attorney General, one of my first responsibilities will be to take a close look at the federal injunction. I think it probably needs to be dismissed. I would expect that we would move quickly to have it dismissed. But in the meantime, I will ensure that our attorneys in the Attorney General's office are focused on what they ought to be focused. That is justice. Let justice be done. And that means if the law has been inappropriately applied, we concede those facts. If it has been appropriately applied, we challenge it and fight to uphold the law. And I expect that the governor will impose the death penalty. I, as a judge, would have signed any of the death warrants sent to me. But, you know, ultimately, we have a law in California. We need that law to be enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question, would you agree or disagree with this statement? Educators have voiced concern that more aggressive immigration enforcement will jeopardize student safety and interfere with their school's educational missions. Why or why not? Commissioner Jones, we'll start with you.
I agree with that statement. And I'm seeing this in my own home community of Sacramento, and as I travel across the state, I'm seeing it there as well. People are afraid. And they have a right to be afraid, because the Trump administration has announced that it's seeking to deport anyone, regardless of whether or not they committed some sort of crime. And people are being deported, families broken up, parents taken away from their children. And so when I talk to educators, when I talk to teachers, school principals, and others, they tell me there is fear in the classroom, there is fear in their schools, there is fear throughout communities. And this sort of fear is a direct result of the Trump administration's immigration policies, which is why I oppose them, which is why I support the sanctuary state and sanctuary city laws, why I'll do everything as Attorney General to protect immigrants. Now, beyond that, though, this fear is also spreading more broadly in the community, and it's bad for law enforcement and bad for public safety. We want people to report crimes. We don't want people to fear the police. We don't want people to believe if they report a crime, they might be deported. We don't want people afraid to go to courts. Our Chief Justice of the state of California sent a sternly worded letter to the United States Attorney General complaining that ICE was showing up at court proceedings, scaring immigrants who are witnesses or victims who are otherwise trying to avail themselves of the courts. This fear is corrosive. It's undermining. It is a bad thing. And as Attorney General, I'll do everything again in my power to fight the Trump administration on this issue. It's bad for law enforcement, it's bad for public safety, it's bad for education, it's bad for our communities, and it's not who we are as Americans.
Attorney General Becerra.
Yes. If you've gone to some of these schools, you will see how traumatized some of these children are. When I was a member of Congress from Los Angeles, I would have some of the families come to my office constantly asking, what can you do? How can we make sure that we're able to come home and our children won't find an empty house when they arrive? I've had college students tell me, I'm not sure if I can concentrate on my exams, my final exams, because I'm not sure if my parents are coming home this evening. It is no way to treat any child. And if we truly are a nation that cares about our kids and that believe that they are our future, then we would never let them be traumatized this way. For 20 years, I worked to try to pass immigration reform in Congress. I did it on a bipartisan basis. We came very close in 2013. I had sat down with some of my friends on the Republican side of the aisle. We arranged a working group. We came up with a bill. We were on the verge of getting it passed. But then leadership in the House prevented us from having a vote. That's what's going on exactly right now, today, in the House of Representatives, where there's a bipartisan effort to pass DACA permanent fix. But the House leadership is preventing a bipartisan group from allowing that vote to go to the floor. The politics is corrosive, but the impact is the trauma on our kids. I am fortunate. I grew up at a time when my father and my mother had earned their citizenship, and I was able to not worry about coming home, not knowing my parents would be there. That is no way to run a country, and that is no way to let someone have to live their life. We owe it to the future of this country to stand up. I tell you, the Kriegers are our best case to make the case that we should have a comprehensive immigration reform.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Early?
What's no way to run a country is have open borders and let undocumented immigrants keep coming in here. We need to secure our borders. We need to take the undocumented, those who have come here and committed crimes since they got here, let ICE have them. With respect to those folks who've come here, the moms and pops, the ones who came here illegally but have not been breaking the law since they got here. They're raising their kids to be part of the American system. They want to be part of the American system. We have to work out. I believe there has to be a path to citizenship for them. They're here. They haven't been breaking the law. But we have to stop the ongoing influx of it, because you just have to look at the numbers, and I've seen the numbers. I see that it costs the state $20 billion a year to care for undocumented immigrants. We can't afford that. And as far as DACA, we absolutely have to have a DACA solution. These DACA kids should not be pawns in this political game. Contrary to what Mr. Becerra says, it's not just the Republicans who are trying to block DACA. It is his party as well. And listen, the last president, when he had the entire Congress, the majority of both houses in Congress, he could have passed a comprehensive DACA bill. He never did it. But we have to take care of the DACA kids. We have to secure our borders. We have to get rid of the criminals who have been here and committing crimes since they got here, who are illegal immigrants. And we have to figure out a way to take the moms and pops who are already here and make them part of our system and part of our society and make them immigrants. And I'll say, make them citizens. And one other thing I'll say, because you never read this in the media. You know, I reach out to the Hispanic American community all around this state. These are great people, hardworking, love their families, God-fearing. Many of them are veterans themselves. They're the first people to tell me they don't like illegal immigration. And you never read that in the paper, but you should talk to those folks, because they say it loud and clear. They're saying, why should anybody else get more benefits and a leg up over them? I support them.
Judge Bailey.
Thank you. You know, you're hearing tonight that there's this problem. It's been around for a while. It's been around for a long while. For like maybe 25 years. Our current Attorney General had ample opportunity to solve the problem. And what we're doing today, we're not talking here about our Attorney General rushing back to Washington and working on the problem. It is a federal problem. It requires federal action. And we can pretend as candidates for Attorney General that we're going to do all these great things. None of us want to see families broken up. But quite frankly, where we are in this state is we now have policies that work counter to the benefit and needs of those people who are undocumented in our neighborhoods. And we all know that they're there, and many of them are providing services and doing good things and helping our society. Congress needs to act. And it's silly to be standing up here pretending like we as attorney generals are going to solve that problem when we take office or while we're in office. Congress needs to act, and they should act now.
Thank you. Now, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. By a random draw, we have Mr. Early speaking first.
Thank you. First of all, thanks again to this wonderful university for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the chancellor, thank you to the dean, and thank you to all the students who worked on this. I really appreciate it. For me, as a non-politician, this is a great honor to be sitting up here as one of the last 4 people to be considered for Attorney General of this state. Listen, for too long now, we've had this professional political class running things. Year after year after year, their main concern is figuring out a way to prolong their political careers. I'm the only person in this race that hasn't lived off the taxpayer ever. I'm the only person in this race who actually has a real private sector job. I'm the only person in this race that doesn't need this job. I have an incredible law firm. But you know what? I stepped up because it's time for new blood. It's time for new energy. It's time for new vision. It's time for a change in Sacramento. You elect any of these other folks, it's going to be the same old, and we have serious problems in this state. It's time to start doing the massive lift of turning around this great state. We're all in this big ship together, and we're sailing through some rough seas, and we have evildoers out there who want to do all of us harm. So we got to figure out a way to work together. We have to figure out a way to start new ideas, to start things afresh again. And I'm the best person in this race to do that. I need your vote, I need your support, and I thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
I want to thank the University of California, Riverside for hosting this debate as well. The mission of this university is so important here in the Inland Empire, educating the next generation of leaders for the Inland Empire. The differences between me and the appointed Attorney General are quite profound. We do agree that it's important to resist President Trump as he intrudes upon California's values. But there are many more things connected with the Office of Attorney General that are not getting done. And it's not just me saying so. Neutral observers have commented that the appointed Attorney General has failed to go after ExxonMobil for lying about climate change, has failed to secure guns from 10,000 persons who by law shouldn't have them, has failed to make sure the database was up and running that doctors could check to make sure they're not contributing to the opioid abuse. We need an independent Attorney General. Mr. Becerra is taking contributions from the insurance industry, from the oil industry, from tobacco. From tobacco, the Attorney General's office has a tobacco litigation unit. These contributions fly directly in the face of his regulatory responsibilities as Attorney General. We need an experienced lawyer as Attorney General, not a political appointee who spent the last 24 of 25 years in Washington, D.C., not practicing law. Now, I've laid out a very aggressive platform of criminal justice reform, and I'll do exactly that, working to make sure we have reentry and rehabilitation programs for people coming out of the correction system. I'll use the office to protect consumers. I'll make sure we take guns away from those that by law shouldn't have them. I'll fight to protect women's access to reproductive health care. I'll fight for civil rights and immigrants' rights, and I'll make sure to use the office in a non-politicized way. I'm independent. I'm not beholden to anyone. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the National Organization for Women, the Consumer Federation of California, newspapers like the San Jose Mercury News, the Sacramento Bee, the Sentinel Cruz in Santa Cruz. The list goes on and on and on. I'd ask you to go to www.davejones.2018.com to learn more about my candidacy. I hope to have your vote on June 5th. Thank you.
Judge Bailey.
Thank you. You know, what makes me unique in this race is that I'm the only candidate for Attorney General that's actually made the tough decision on whether someone has earned their way to state prison. I've also made the tough decision as to whether somebody has also earned a second chance. I was the judge in our county that set up our Veterans Court. I handled our behavioral health court. I handled our drug courts. I saw people who came to court with issues and problems that needed someone, anyone, to care for them. And I, as a judge, took that on as my responsibility. And quite frankly, as a judge, you can only do one case at a time. And it seems like that ought to be satisfactory to anyone, except when you look around California and you see thousands and thousands of homeless in the state. We need an attorney general who will take the office and make it be fair and impartial. One that is concerned about you, your kids, your grandkids, your parents. I am that person. I solicit your support. I ask for your vote on June 5th. You can go to www.bailey4ag.com to get more information on my campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, and Attorney General Becerra.
So as I've said, I was born the son of immigrants, and I didn't know how to get myself ready for college, but I was fortunate that I did go, and so did my three sisters, or one of my sisters served in the military. When you're born in a home where it's not customary to see a professional or to know how to get ready for the PSAT or the SAT, you have to have optimism running through your DNA, because you got to believe things are going to get better. I think that's the way the dreamers in America have handled things. When they say they are undocumented and unafraid, they put themselves out there in public and put themselves at risk. But I think what they're telling us is, once you see me, you're going to say I'm just like you, and you will not have the will to deport me. And so I hope I can reflect what the dreamers reflect. I hope I can be an attorney general who will always say, I am unbowed and unafraid to take on whatever the challenge, whether it's fighting and winning against the sex traffickers or the corporate wrongdoers, whether it's going after and winning against federal government unconstitutional overreach, or it's going after the criminal gangs, or whether it's going after the fraudsters who take advantage of our seniors and our military families. I want to be unbowed and unafraid. Because you see, that's what makes California so great. We have more clean energy jobs by a factor of 10 than there are coal mining jobs in the entire country. Just California, 10 times more jobs in clean energy. We graduate more people from our colleges than any other state in the nation. If we do this right, we will create a state that will continue to be the economic engine, and we lead, and that's what I hope I'll get to do as your Attorney General. I ask for your vote.
Thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen. This concludes tonight's debate. We want to thank the candidates for joining us here tonight at UC Riverside. We want to thank our sponsors, and we want to thank the audience, everyone who came out tonight. We wish you all a very good night.